Video games are the perfect respite from the woes of the modern world. If you're having a bad day, loading up one of your favourite titles and losing yourself in its story, characters, and intricately crafted world can be just what the doctor ordered. In fact, we'd be shocked if there's a single gamer out there who hasn't wondered at one point or another what it would be like to actually be an inhabitant of the worlds of their favourite game. And in many cases, it probably wouldn't be all that bad. There are some games, though, with settings so harsh and unforgiving that we can't imagine anyone, whether hero or NPC, has a particularly pleasant time existing in them. And it's those we're looking at in today's video. We will be including a few settings that started out life in other media, but as long as they've been represented in video games in a memorable way, then they're okay in our book. I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 video game worlds we'd hate to live in. Number 10. The Sims series. On the surface of it, the world of The Sims doesn't seem all that bad. You can learn a new skill in a matter of hours, get a job doing more or less anything you fancy, and even magic money out of thin air. Sounds great, right? Wrong. What you've got to remember is that in the world of The Sims, your life is not your own, and you're beholden to the whims of a merciless god. You might get lucky and get someone who's liberal with the old mother load, builds you a nice house to live in, and furnishes you with everything your heart desires. However, you could get stuck with someone like, well, anyone from TripleJump. We get bored on The Sims very, very easily. They might turn off your free will, force you into a relationship you don't really want, force you to have kids you don't really want, or simply tell you to get into a swimming pool and take away the ladder. Yeah, I think I'll stay away from my local leisure centre for a while, you know, just in case. Number 9. The Elder Scrolls series. Are you sick of all the ills of modern living? Just longing for a simple life where you can perhaps start a farm, own a few chickens, and kick back with a mug or two of ale in the local tavern? Well then, the world of the Elder Scrolls might sound like exactly what you're looking for. But don't be fooled, because those nice stone-built towns and rolling hills are naught but a facade hiding an altogether unpleasant place to live. Your first problem in Tamriel is a rather large one. Dragons. There's every chance you'll be happily going about your day, tending to your crops and feeding the goats, when all of a sudden your livestock has been stolen by a ginormous winged lizard. Or worse, you have been charred to a crisp. If you do manage to get through the day unbarbecued though, there's no peace in sleep, as you never know whether that altercation you had with Roy down at the market the other day has caused him to send the Dark Brotherhood after you. Bloody Roy. And don't even get me started on all of the gods there are to keep track of, the fact that demons very much exist, and the constant political unrest. God. Then again, Somerset is quite nice though. You'd probably be okay there, I reckon. Number 8. The Baldur's Gate series. In a lot of ways, the Forgotten Realms would actually be a fairly cool place to live. The very existence of wizards as a class implies that literally anyone can do magic if they spend long enough with their nose in a book, taverns are plentiful, and Tressim exist, and who wouldn't want a cat with wings? Unfortunately though, the nice things in the world of the Baldur's Gate games, which originated in the tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, are far outweighed by all of the bad stuff. Since, as we've established, magic exists, there are plenty of people in the Forgotten Realms who are more than happy to misuse it, and instead of utilizing their abilities for good, they use them to gain power and oppress others. Even those without magic aren't guaranteed to be on the level, and anyone who's ever played a game of D&D will tell you that bandits are so common that they seem to outnumber the non-bandits. Oh, and then of course there are all the non-humanoid threats. Gelatinous cubes, displacer beasts, mind flayers, beholders, you name it, the Forgotten Realms has it. Based on all of the above, I think it's best that the place is left forgotten. Number 7. Cyberpunk 2077. Alright, so since the past is completely out of the question, at least if Tamriel and the Forgotten Realms are anything to go by, then perhaps the future holds something a bit more pleasant. Well, no, actually, it doesn't. Not if Cyberpunk 2077 is to be believed, at any rate. A megacity in the free state of North California, Night City is a corporatocracy, i.e. it's run by corporations for the benefit of corporations. Due to its corrupt governance and ineffectual police force, crime is prevalent and gang violence is very common, something which has led to open carry laws being in effect for all citizens. Furthermore, homelessness and poverty are widespread, meaning that if you did live in Night City, it's highly likely you'd be living hand to mouth, or rather hand to Ripperdoc, as you'd most likely wind up getting addicted to getting cybernetic upgrades. Oh yeah, and then there's the risk that you'll lose your mind if you end up getting too heavily modified. Still, Night City does look very cool, and a lot of stuff will be done for you by robots, so that's kind of nice, but is it worth all of the poverty, crime, bickering corporations, gangs, guns, and the risk of going insane if you get one too many upgrades, though? Certainly not, in our opinion. Number 6. The Resident Evil series. How would you like to live in a world that's almost identical to the pretty miserable one we live in right now, except it's also overrun with bloodthirsty zombies? What? No? Yeah, I didn't think so. Unfortunately, this is the reality for characters of the Resident Evil universe. The world as presented in Resident Evil is relatively normal for the most part, but when things go wrong, oh boy or girl or other, do they go wrong. You see, there are various organizations all over the world who are interested in bioorganic weapons, and because of this, the poor folks of Raccoon City and beyond are often left to deal with the fallout of whatever virus or parasite has gotten loose this time. I mean, God, it's rough enough even if you're a trained professional like Chris Redfield or Leon S. Kennedy, both of whom have had plenty of brushes with death over the years, so just imagine being some Joe Schmo, just trying to go about your morning commute when out of nowhere something like this guy appears. And if it's not hordes of zombies roaming the streets and tearing people to bits, it's parasite-obsessed cults trying to mind control the president of the USA, or moldy rednecks shooting bugs from unsavory places. I really don't think bugs should be there, ma'am. Have you thought about seeing a gynecologist? Number 5. The Diablo series. You know what's even worse than a world overrun by zombies? A world overrun by demons, that's what. If you're unfortunate enough to live in the Diablo universe, a few things are assured. Firstly, you're probably going to live in some kind of squalor. It's basically the Middle Ages after all, and if you're not lucky enough to be nobility, then sorry friend, enjoy the cholera. Secondly, when you're not ploughing the field from dawn till dusk and dying of things like smallpox, then you'll need to watch out for the roving hellspawn that like to pop up from time to time. The overarching narrative of the Diablo series concerns a big old war between the forces of heaven and hell, but rather than sticking to their own turf, as would be polite in such a scenario, the factions have decided the best place to settle their differences is the mortal plane. Yippee, thanks guys. Now you might be lucky, in air quotes, and be born with some fun powers that make you an ideal candidate for getting swept up in all of that nonsense, but the chances are rather slim. No, I'm afraid the best you can hope for is a very simple life that only occasionally gets interrupted by the legions of hell. Either way though, at least you won't have to live there for very long. Number 4. The Soulsborne series. Oh, what's that? The portmanteau Soulsborne implying multiple games in one entry? Well, you might call this one a bit of a wild card, oh goodness me! We were just gonna stick the Dark Souls series on this list, but when we got to thinking about all of the nightmares in the likes of Demon's Souls, Elden Ring, and Bloodborne, we simply couldn't leave them out, so that's that. Besides, it really doesn't matter if you're in Lordran, Yharnam, or the lands between, you're in for a rough old time of it, any which way. But why would it be so awful to inhabit the worlds of the Soulsborne games? Well, honestly, it would be quicker to list the reasons why it wouldn't. If you're in Lordran, it's highly likely you'll be undead, and as such, you are cursed to live and die over and over again until you become hollow and completely lose your mind. Residents of Yharnam live in fear of the bloodborne plague that's afflicting the people and turning them all into monstrous beasties, all whilst praying they don't ever have to come face to face with myriad eldritch horrors. Bola Altaria, due to its inhabitants' misuse of magic, has been consumed by a dark being known as the Old One, and the lands between are basically just a battlefield for the gods, each of whom wish to become an Elden Lord. And we haven't even mentioned all of the horrific, mutilated, twisted beings that call each of these places home. Just avoid. Avoid at all costs. Number 3. Half-Life 2. You might be wondering why we've put Half-Life 2 on this list and not its predecessor, which is a fair question. The reason for this is that in Half-Life, the issue is relatively contained, and it's only after the events of that game that the plops really hits the fan. Following the alien invasion at the center of Half-Life, Earth was invaded by the Combine, a multidimensional alien empire who were able to defeat Earth's forces in just 7 hours. Once they were in full control of the planet, they implemented a brutal police state. The surviving humans are forced to live in designated apartment blocks in numbered cities and wear blue uniforms. The Vortigaunts, who are the antagonists in Half-Life, are enslaved, and whilst we'd usually be okay with a baddie getting punished, enslavement is a bit too far in our book. Citizens are routinely maltreated by the Combine and are often subjected to unexpected searches, interrogation, and police brutality. Worst of all, though, the whole place is just so drab. We can accept the whole oppression thing, it's kind of part and parcel of being an alien invader, but would a pop of colour here and there really hurt? What? Hey, let go of me! What do you mean, Descent? Somebody help! Number 2. The Fallout series. I feel like we probably don't have to spell out why living in a post-apocalyptic world like the one we see in Fallout is less than ideal. But then again, if we didn't, this entry would be mighty short, so we'll do it anyway. According to Fallout's lore, the Earth is devastated by a catastrophic nuclear exchange in the year 2077. The vast majority of people succumb to the blasts and any resulting radiation, some are lucky enough to be locked away in vaults, and everyone else is forced to scratch a living off of whatever's left on the surface, which is, spoiler alert, not good. As one would imagine, the vast majority of the planet is a scorched, irradiated, lawless wasteland, and as such, various nefarious factions roam about the place, though they are arguably the least bad thing there is, what with all of the mutated beasties there are out there. But don't go thinking life in the vaults is much better either. Whilst 1 or 2 are fairly palatable, most are nothing more than flimsy facades for heinous human experiments. So even if you're one of the lucky few who's been able to secure a spot in a vault, you're probably going to be frozen alive or trapped in an inescapable prison with a live panther. Yes, really, that actually happened in one of the vaults. And number 1, the Warhammer 40k series. Though it started out life as the setting for a tabletop wargame, the Warhammer 40k universe has been a mainstay of the gaming world for the past 3 decades, and as such, we feel it more than deserves a spot on today's list, because honestly, there is nowhere in the world of video games we would rather not live. The Warhammer 40k universe makes everything else on this list look like Stardew Valley. Oh yeah? What's wrong with it, I hear you ask? Well, if we were to list every issue with the 40k universe, would be here all day, but the Cliff's Notes version is thus. First off, the entire universe is at war, and no matter where you live, you are going to feel the effects of this one way or another. If you're lucky enough to be born into nobility, things might be alright for you, but for the vast majority of people, all they've got to look forward to in life is being worked to death in some factory, and that's if they're not murdered first. The factions of Chaos and Xenos are an ever-looming threat to any sliver of peace there might be, and the Imperium's oppressive regime means that any sort of societal mobility is practically non-existent. If this is what the 41st millennium holds, we are so glad we won't be around to see it.